All right, here we are again, Realcomm Live. The goal of what we're doing here is to take what we hear in the big room and kind of pull out the high points, get the big thinkers on the topics, and just get 10, 15 minutes of conversation, right? And about not only what you talked about, but what else you're seeing at the conference and stuff like that. But I think given your topic, we're going to focus pretty much on SCSP and what you're doing. So Liza, why don't you just quick summary, SCSP, the vision, what the organization is all about, and then we'll dive a little bit into what we talked about.
Sure. We are a national security focused technology initiative, and we are located just outside Washington, D.C. We were founded by Eric Schmidt, the former CEO of Google, who really became compelled by the idea that the United States was slipping behind in technology leadership to the People's Republic of China. So through a number of events, China getting ahead in things like 5G network hardware, hypersonic missiles, EV batteries, Eric really felt the need to bring together a group to look at these issues closely and come up with recommendations for our government in particular, and also new ways of bringing together the public and private sectors to solve these problems.
It's pretty easy. If life is going good and you're making some money and you're going on nice vacations, it's pretty difficult sometimes to pay attention to what's going on in the other world and trying to figure out how it could impact you or your kids 5, 10 years from now. I mean, as you're taking this message out to the world, the business community, NGOs, whoever you talk to, are people getting it?
Happy to comment on that and then see what Dave's perspective is. Yes, I think there's been a sea change, Jim. I think maybe 5 or 6 years ago, especially right now we're sitting in Silicon Valley. It's kind of the epicenter of technology innovation. And 5, 6, 7 years ago, there was a lot of reluctance, I think, among the venture capital community to work with the Pentagon and work with the U.S. government. And that's really changed. And so now when we engage with technologists, with investors, there's a lot of understanding that the U.S. really faces a challenge, and they want to come forward and lend a hand and kind of inform the government and offer advice.
This is an all hands on deck moment.
Yeah. What are you seeing?
I think with the pandemic and some of the supply chain disruptions, specifically in the chip industry, that was really a big wake-up call for a wide swath, because we saw the dependencies, right?
We saw $1.17 chips go to $71 overnight. We saw deliveries going from 2 weeks to 2 years.
Yeah.
In the built environment. I mean, our vendors were coming to us saying, we can't.
And there's chips in everything. I mean, in a vehicle, there's 100 chips, 1,000 chips, 100 chips. But there's only a handful that are, at the very leading edge node. The rest are legacy, and a lot of those come from China, and that was what caused a lot of the disruption. So it opened a lot of eyes across multiple industries. And
so our conversation started after Liza introduced us on 5G, another whole topic, which we cover quite extensively. And now we're talking about AI, right? But you made some statements in there about what you do at SCSP and the concerns that you have. Why don't you share a little bit about your role as it relates to AI, 5G in general, and how we're going to work together, our industry with SCSP, to try to fast track some of these issues and concerns?
I think with AI, there's a massive opportunity space, because it is what we're calling a general purpose technology. So we're going to see it affecting. I mean, it became public consciousness about a year ago, right, with large language models, and some of the image generation. But that's just the initial look that a lot of the public got. I think it's already affecting and impacting quite a few markets, and it's just going to get faster and faster as that innovation pace.
So like in the built environment, where we're constantly putting things in ceilings, closets, hanging on the wall, electronics, right, to make our buildings come alive, be smart, engaging. How concerned is a real estate owner operator, either on the corporate side or the commercial side? I mean, as they're putting new systems into their buildings, what are some of the concerns that they should have?
I think so. You're pointing to this important trend of pervasive digitalization, where we're racing into this era where there's sensors and microchips embedded in everything, and connectivity out to the edge devices. And so the lesson that I think we've learned is that it is important to know your supplier and to know who are the technology companies that are making this technology, that are setting the standards, that are designing it, building it, and then operating and servicing it. It matters who those companies are, and do these companies operate with checks and balances, like the rule of law, as American companies are subjected to here, and European companies and others. And what we realize is that in the People's Republic of China, the companies are not subject to the same authorities and checks and balances, and so we have to take that into account.
We've actually had some U.S. companies go over there, and they said they basically have the right, under the auspice of some type of criminal or civil activity, that they can just come and take servers and take control of the data, and it's very different. Probably 10 years ago, I wrote an article about the idea of a microphone being included in a lighting fixture above a conference room table in a boardroom, trying to talk about the implications, right? Of, and why did they install that microphone? It wasn't the spine, it was like lights on, right? Voice recognition. But by virtue of that microphone on a network in the building, out to the internet, with AI's ability to scan for keywords, I mean, is it inconceivable to think that if we bought technology from the wrong supplier, that boardroom conversation isn't listened to by a human, but to be monitored by AI, looking for keywords and trends and intellectual property theft, trade secrets, national defense? I mean, how concerned do we have to be as we instrument our buildings?
I think very concerned. I mean, there's chips everywhere now. We're trying to digitize the world essentially and put these sensors out there, and data is the gold, right? Or it's the new oil. So it is a commodity, and we need to be very sensitive to the cybersecurity implications and the hardening that is necessary, because when you put all these devices out there that are all connected and networked, that's an attack surface really, and that's a way into your network. So managing that risk, even if it's a small, Wi-Fi connected fish tank, that is an access vector that we've seen.
I understand that the IoT modem industry, which is that critical bridge that takes an analog device and makes it digital to the network, right? That 80% of that market is controlled by China.
Yeah, I believe the cellular module that basically goes into quite.
And that was a decision they made 8 to 10 years ago. This is not something they're just learning today. This is strategy. This is plan.
Yep. And they're seeking to dominate and drive out the competition, and then that is a choke point for all of our technology and all of our connectivity. Because data has to go through that, yes.
You just push the button, the bridge closes, and we lose our functionality. And we become super dependent on it.
You make a good point. China is quite strategic about how they approach data, in some ways more strategic and organized than the United States is.
I've been in those meetings.
Terms of, the Communist Party determined several years ago that data is a key economic resource. They're calling it the fourth factor of production, equal to things like labor and investment and capital. And so they put out a number of strategic plans and documents to be able to control data flows in and out of China, as well as any foreign companies that operate in China or that have a nexus to China by operating with PRC companies. They exert control and influence over that data.
I've been saying for a long time
laws.
that we're playing checkers and they're playing four-dimensional chess. At the government level, at the business level, is that changing? Are we upping our game in the last 24, 36 months with this awareness?
Well, the U.S. still lacks comprehensive national data privacy laws. So we have this very checkered state-by-state approach. There's privacy laws in some states and not in others. So we really do need a national approach that's not, totalitarian the way the Chinese are, and not sort of overly heavy on the regulatory side the way the European Union is, but really an American approach that balances the need to protect privacy, protect our democratic values, but also get the economic value out of data. So we really need to move forward
That's
on
the
that.
challenge that Eric took on, to maintain competitiveness while at the same time democratic principles.
Right.
It's going to be an all hands on deck, right?
Yeah, and we appreciate that you're helping us bridge the gap to your industry.
That was my
it's
last
very
question.
important to.
How do we work together? We bring our industry together. We bring your connections, your leverage. what can the average building owner, operator, campus builder, how can they leverage SCSP in your world through us?
I think just understanding that anyone operating in the emerging technology space is a player and a stakeholder in this geopolitical rivalry. Whether you're connected to the government or not, if you're operating at the technological edge, you are of interest to the PRC. They're interested in your technology. They're interested in your data.
Are they interested in this meeting?
Absolutely, absolutely. We publish a lot of reports. If you want to understand more about the recommendations we're putting out, the assessments, please check it out, and we always welcome feedback. Tell us what we're getting right
What you
and
might
what
want
we're
to do
getting
is
wrong.
a webinar, kind of a public service webinar, where maybe you go through the reports and give us high-level summaries of the 5G, the AI, right? And then
Sure.
to encourage people to read the entire report, which is very lengthy, very comprehensive.
Yeah.
But maybe find ways to get all of your intellect in snippets. Or
Yes.
nuggets.
Yeah, we recognize people are busy, and so when we put out these long reports, we also always try to put out a shorter newsletter, sort of the Cliff Notes version. You can also put it into ChatGPT and get an even shorter version if you like.
Absolutely, why wouldn't you? Well, we're out of time, and I just want to say thank you for making the trip, both of you. I know you were out for another meeting, which we got lucky to get you here as well. We didn't have to bring you in over the big screen.
Yeah.
And David, thank you for your commitment to be
Absolutely.
with this group of people discussing AI. And
I've made some connections, and it's great.
yeah,
It's
I
been
think
a great
you're gonna,
conference.
by the end of the day, you're going to make a few more, because the people that really care about this are here. They're leaning in.
Yeah.
And I'm calling this the foundational event, meaning lets us figure out who's really leaning into this, and then this will help us build for June when we're in Tampa for our Realcomm and IBCon. So thank you so much. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you, Jim.